Fake HA cops dragged my wife from our lakefront cabin deck while I watched through security cameras. My hands were shaking with rage as these imposters put their hands on the woman I love. But who sent them? And why target us specifically? What we'd accidentally witnessed 3 nights earlier had made us a threat to someone very dangerous. What happened in the next 30 seconds would expose a conspiracy bigger than anyone imagined. But first, someone was about to learn a very painful lesson. Comment where you're watching from. Drop a comment. What's your worst HOA story? Look, when Maya and I bought that lakefront cabin in Cedar Ridge, Michigan, we thought we'd found paradise. After 8 years of deployments and military bases, I just wanted somewhere peaceful where my wife could paint those sunsets she'd always talked about. The place was perfect. Quiet neighborhood, friendly neighbors, beautiful lake view. What we didn't expect was Brenda Hale, the HOA president, who turned out to be our worst nightmare. Week 2 after moving in, Maya was up late working on lesson plans when she glanced out the kitchen window and saw something weird. There was Christina sneaking around the community mailbox at 11 p.m. pulling out thick envelopes and stuffing them into her purse. Maya mentioned it to me over breakfast the next morning, thinking maybe it was legitimate HOA business. Honey, I saw Christina at the mailbox last night collecting what looked like cash payments. That's normal, right? I should have trusted my gut right then. 8 years as a Navy SEAL teaches you to recognize when something's off. And everything about Christina screams danger. The next morning, she showed up at our door with her clipboard. But the moment she spotted my military license plates and veteran decals, her whole demeanor shifted. Gone was the fake neighborly smile, replaced by something cold and calculating. Her questions weren't normal HOA welcome wagon stuff either. They were straight-up interrogation techniques. You military types think you own everything, don't you? This isn't your base, soldier boy. My husband died because of military incompetence, and I won't have entitled veterans disrupting my community. The venom in her voice was unmistakable. This woman had a serious problem with anyone who'd served their country. That afternoon, our mailbox was stuffed with violation notices. I'm talking about a stack of them. Dock violation for our perfectly legal pier flag improperly displayed even though it met all federal guidelines. Military decor labeled as not community standard. And get this, she even questioned my VA disability parking permit, calling it fraudulent use. Every single violation targeted my veteran status. It was systematic, calculated, and personal. I've faced enemy fire in hostile territories, but I'd never encountered someone who weaponized bureaucracy with such precision. This wasn't about HOA rules. This was about Brenda Hale declaring war on my family because I had the audacity to serve my country. That evening, while I was reviewing the bogus violations, our neighbor Walter approached during my usual dog walk. Walter was 68, a Korean War veteran who had been living in the neighborhood for decades. The old man looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder like he was afraid of being watched. "Son, I need to warn you about something," he whispered, his weathered hands shaking slightly. "I used to be HOA treasurer until 2 years ago when Christina demanded I do some creative accounting to hide missing funds. When I refused, she made my life hell until I quit. You're not the first military family she's targeted. She destroyed the last veteran family who lived here." And the fear in Walter's eyes was real, and it told me everything I needed to know about what we were up against. Walter showed me a folder he had been secretly keeping. Documentation of Christina's systematic harassment campaign against military families. Photos, emails, violation notices, it was all there. She'd researched every new resident's military background and specifically targeted veteran households with increasingly aggressive tactics until they gave up and moved away. 4 military families in just 2 years, all driven out by this woman's pathological hatred. She blames the military for her husband's death, Walter explained. Captain Daniel Hale died in a training accident 5 years ago, and she's been taking revenge on veteran families ever since. The pieces were starting to come together, and none of them painted a pretty picture. Maya found me sitting at our kitchen table that night, staring at the pile of violation notices with my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "She's not just stealing money, Evan," I told her, my voice barely controlled. She's coming after us personally because I served. She mentioned her husband died in a military accident. Maya's face went pale as the implications sank in. This wasn't about community rules or neighborly disputes. This was about a grieving widow who twisted her pain into something ugly and dangerous. We'd bought our dream home and walked straight into the crosshairs of someone who saw my military service as a personal insult to her husband's memory. The next day, Christina posted on the neighborhood's social media page, and her message was crystal clear. Certain military residents think combat experience gives them authority over civilian communities. The HOA will protect residents from veteran intimidation. The post was carefully worded to sound reasonable while painting me as some kind of threat. I watched the comments roll in. Some neighbors defending us, others buying into Christina's narrative about dangerous veterans. She was dividing the community, using my service record as a weapon against my own family. This woman was smarter and more dangerous than I had initially thought. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Christina's cousins, Kyle and Trent Baker, showed up at our front door. These two looked like they'd failed the police academy entrance exam and decided to play dress-up instead. HOA security inspection, Kyle announced, puffing out his chest like he actually had authority. But here's what really caught my attention. While Trent was asking pointless questions about our landscaping, Kyle was taking photos of every window, every door, every potential entry point to our home. This wasn't an inspection. It was reconnaissance. My military training kicked in as I watched them work. They were mapping our property, noting our security vulnerabilities, and documenting our daily routines. Christina wasn't just harassing us. She was planning something bigger. As they walked around our property with their fake authority and obvious amateur hour surveillance techniques, one question kept burning in my mind. Kyle was photographing our home like he was planning a tactical operation, taking notes about sight lines and access points that had nothing to do with HOA compliance. The way he focused on our bedroom windows, the angles he chose for the photos of our back deck where Maya liked to paint. This felt personal and invasive in a way that went far beyond property violations. What exactly is Christina planning? Brenda Hale didn't waste any time escalating her personal war against my family. The woman launched a systematic harassment campaign that would have impressed military strategists with its precision and ruthlessness. Every single day brought new violation notices stuffed into our mailbox. Excessive patriotic displays for our American flag, military vehicle, not community standard for my pickup truck with veteran plates, aggressive veteran behavior complaints filed with the county. She was throwing everything at us, hoping something would stick. But the worst part, she wasn't just going after our property, she was attacking my VA benefits directly. The call from the VA office came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing security footage from our new cameras. Mr. Howard, we've received a formal complaint questioning the legitimacy of your 30% disability rating, the investigator explained. The complainant alleges you're using military training to threaten community members while claiming combat-related injuries. My blood ran cold. Christina wasn't just trying to drive us out of the neighborhood. She was attempting to destroy my military benefits, the compensation I had earned through 8 years of service and a back injury that still wakes me up some nights. This woman had crossed every line imaginable. Maya found me in our home office that evening, staring at the VA investigation paperwork with my fists clenched so tight my knuckles had gone white. "Evan, what's wrong?" she asked. And when I explained what Christina had done, I watched my wife's face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally heartbreak. "She's turning the whole community against us," Maya whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "The neighbor across the street won't even wave anymore. Maybe we should just leave like the others did." Hearing my wife, this strong independent woman who'd supported me through deployments and PTSD counseling, sound so defeated, made something inside me snap. We weren't running. Not from this neighborhood terrorist. Walter provided the missing pieces to Christina's strategy when he visited us the next evening, carrying a manila folder stuffed with documentation. "I've been keeping records for 2 years," the old veteran explained, his hands trembling with either age or anger. "Christina targets military families with false complaints until they move away. She's got files documenting previous veteran harassment campaigns, complete with timelines and escalation tactics. He showed me photos, emails, violation notices, an entire systematic approach to destroying military families' lives. The Johnson family, the Hayes clan, the Thompsons, all veterans, all driven out by Christina's relentless campaign of bureaucratic terrorism. But here's what really made my blood boil. Walter revealed the personal motivation behind Christina's crusade. Her husband, Captain Daniel Hale, died in a training accident 5 years ago when a military transport crashed due to mechanical failure. Walter explained she blames military incompetence for his death and has been taking revenge on veteran families ever since. The woman was using her grief as an excuse to destroy innocent families who had nothing to do with her husband's tragic accident. She'd twisted her pain into something toxic and dangerous, turning every veteran family into a target for her misplaced rage. What made Christina particularly dangerous was how she maintained control despite never having legal authority. She never filed the proper paperwork to become HOA president, Walter revealed, dropping a bombshell that explained everything. When the previous board resigned in frustration 2 years ago, Christina just took over using intimidation and fake authority documents. The community doesn't know she's illegitimate. She maintains control through fear and bureaucratic manipulation. This woman was running an entire neighborhood through smoke and mirrors, and nobody had bothered to check her credentials because they were too afraid to challenge her. The harassment escalated when Kyle and Trent returned for their follow-up inspection, clearly trying to provoke me into an incident they could report. These 2 amateur-hour wannabe cops swagger up to my door like they own the place, asking invasive questions about my daily routine, my work schedule, and whether I keep weapons in the house. I maintained military discipline, answering only what was legally required while documenting everything. But inside, I was calculating exactly how many seconds it would take to neutralize both threats if they made the wrong move. They were fishing for a reaction, hoping I'd give them ammunition for Christina's dangerous veteran narrative. Christina's violation notices became increasingly absurd as her desperation grew. She cited our flag for creating noise pollution during windy days, labeled my veteran license plate as promoting violence through military imagery, claimed my military bearing intimidates civilians during neighborhood walks, and even suggested my VA disability parking constituted fraud against taxpayers. The woman was grasping at straws, but each frivolous complaint fed into her larger narrative about entitled, dangerous veterans disrupting peaceful civilian communities. She was playing a long game, building a paper trail to support whatever endgame she had planned. The community was splitting down the middle with neighbors choosing sides based on fear rather than facts. Christina had cultivated a group of supporters who genuinely believed her propaganda about military families being inherently dangerous and entitled. Meanwhile, other veterans and military families in the area were reaching out quietly, sharing their own stories of harassment and intimidation. It was like watching a neighborhood civil war unfold with Christina as the puppet master pulling everyone's strings from behind her fake authority. Noah Hale's first contact came through a gaming app message that nearly gave me a heart attack. Christina's 19-year-old son reaching out secretly to apologize for his mother's behavior and offer inside intelligence about her plans. "I'm ashamed of what she's doing to military families," he wrote. "My dad would be disgusted if he knew she was using his death to justify this hate campaign." When Noah showed me his mother's home office during a clandestine meeting, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The walls were covered with surveillance photos of military families, detailed notes on their service records, and what looked like tactical planning for harassment campaigns across multiple communities. Christina's office looked like something out of a conspiracy thriller. Neighborhood surveillance photos organized by family, detailed doses on every veteran household within a 20 m radius, and handwritten notes about weaknesses she could exploit. "Military wife works late Tuesdays," read one note about a Navy family 3 neighborhoods over. "Veteran suffers PTSD episodes." "Potential leverage," said another about an Army retiree down the street. This woman wasn't just targeting us. She was running intelligence operations against the entire veteran community in our area. The breaking point came when Christina announced a special assessment of $5,000 specifically targeting our property for security enhancements needed due to military resident concerns. The timing wasn't coincidental. She knew about my VA investigation, knew we were vulnerable, and was applying maximum financial pressure to force us out. But as I read her official notice, Walter quietly pulled me aside with a warning that made my blood run cold. She used the same excuse before the Johnson family disappeared overnight, he whispered, glancing around nervously. The old veteran's hands were shaking as he continued. Nobody talks about what really happened to them, Evan. One day they were fighting back. The next day their house was empty and they were gone. What happened to the Johnsons and why won't anyone talk about them? The morning everything changed started like any other with Maya setting up her easel on our lakefront deck to catch the early light for her painting. After weeks of Christina's harassment, my wife had decided she wasn't going to be intimidated out of enjoying our own property. I'm not hiding inside like a prisoner, she told me that morning, her jaw set with determination. If she wants to mess with us, she can watch me paint the most beautiful sunrise this lake has ever seen. I was working from home that day, monitoring security feeds from my office when I saw Christina's black SUV pull up with Kyle and Trent, climbing out wearing the most ridiculous excuse for uniforms I'd ever witnessed. These two clowns strutted up to our deck, wearing what were obviously Halloween store security costumes, complete with plastic badges that said Mall Cop in bold letters. Trent's shirt was inside out with the $12.99 price tag still dangling from the collar, and Kyle's security patch was coming off at the corners. I've seen middle school kids put together more convincing outfits for career day, but here they were trying to intimidate my wife with their discount costume authority. Through my office window, I could hear Christina directing them like some kind of bargain basement general, her voice sharp with anticipation. "Ma'am, you need to vacate this area immediately," Kyle announced to Maya, puffing out his chest like he actually had authority over our private property. But this wasn't about HOA violations. Christina made that crystal clear when she stepped forward with her phone camera rolling. "Military wives think they're entitled to everything," she declared, her voice dripping with venom. "Time to learn civilian rules. Your husband's military training doesn't scare us anymore." The mask was finally off. This wasn't about community standards or property violations. This was about Christina's pathological hatred of anyone who'd served their country. When Maya calmly asked to see their written authority, Christina's composure cracked slightly. "We are the authority here," she snapped, then signaled Kyle and Trent with a nod that made my blood run cold. "Remove this entitled military wife before she calls her trained killer husband." That's when things went from harassment to assault. Kyle grabbed Maya's left arm while Trent seized her right, and they physically dragged my wife from our lakefront deck toward the cabin entrance. Christina filmed the whole thing, coaching them like a director. "Document the aggressive military family trespassing on community property. Make sure you get her resistance on video." I was already on the phone with 911 when I burst through our front door. But seeing two grown men dragging my wife across our own property activated every protective instinct my military training had drilled into me. 8 years as a Navy SEAL doesn't just disappear because you're wearing civilian clothes. It becomes part of your DNA, especially when someone threatens your family. 911 operator. I have 2 individuals physically assaulting my wife on my property. I reported while moving toward the confrontation. The dispatcher's voice seemed to fade into background noise as my tactical training took over. The takedown lasted exactly 30 seconds and used the minimum force necessary to neutralize 2 threats while staying on the emergency call. Kyle released Maya the moment I applied pressure point control to his wrist, a technique that causes immediate compliance without permanent damage. Trent tried to maintain his grip on my wife, so I used a joint lock restraint that put him face down on our deck in a controlled position. Both fake security officers were neutralized using non-lethal techniques while I maintained constant communication with the 911 dispatcher, ensuring everything was documented properly. The best part, these amateur hour wannabe cops couldn't even keep their costumes together during the confrontation. Trent's fake badge fell off during the take-on, revealing a Junior Ranger badge from some camping store underneath, while Kyle's ripped security shirt exposed a Dave's Bachelor Party 2019 tank top. Christina kept filming, thinking she was documenting an assault, but she'd actually recorded her own criminal conspiracy on video. "Did you get him beating them up?" she asked Trent, not realizing her coaching was being captured on multiple neighbor phones and security cameras. Kyle, still controlled in my non-lethal restraint hold, whimpered something that destroyed Christina's entire operation. Cousin Christina said this would be easy. The family connection was now public knowledge, witnessed by half a dozen neighbors who'd come out to see what the commotion was about. Christina's face went from triumphant to panicked in about 2 seconds as she realized her carefully constructed authority figure persona had just been exposed as a family scam operation involving her unemployed relatives playing dress-up. When the real police arrived, they found a scene that told the story perfectly. 2 fake security officers detained by a professional veteran on his own property with multiple witness accounts and video evidence showing who initiated physical contact. Officer Ramirez took one look at Kyle and Trent's costumes and turned to Christina with barely concealed disgust. "Ma'am, these individuals have no legal authority to remove anyone from private property. You've essentially hired your relatives to commit assault and battery." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Christina had spent weeks claiming I was dangerous, only to be caught on camera orchestrating an actual assault. The crowd of neighbors had grown during the incident, and Walter appeared carrying a shoebox that would change everything. "While you've been busy with your fake security theater," he called out to Christina, "I thought everyone should see these." Inside the box were 3 years' worth of cash payment receipts, $6,000 in HOA fees paid directly to Christina with zero documentation or official records. Ruth, the elderly neighbor who had been too afraid to speak up before, stood beside Walter with tears in her eyes. "I've been paying cash for 3 years, she announced to the gathered crowd. "Never got a single receipt. My grandson's in the Navy, and when I told Christina, the harassment started immediately." Christina's tactical error became obvious to everyone watching. She'd claimed I used dangerous military assault techniques on legitimate HOA enforcement officers, but the responding officer was a Marine veteran who immediately recognized my restraint and professionalism. "Sir, I've seen actual combat violence." Officer Ramirez told Christina, "What your cousin experienced was a controlled, non-lethal response to stop an assault in progress. If anything, this gentleman showed remarkable restraint." The woman who had spent weeks demonizing military training had just been lectured about proper use of force by another veteran. As the crowd dispersed and statements were taken, Maya stood beside me with her chin raised defiantly, still holding her paintbrush like a tiny sword. She said, "I don't belong here because you served our country." My wife told Officer Ramirez, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and looked directly at Christina, who was frantically trying to explain to the officer why her assault charges against me were legitimate. "We belong wherever we choose to live," I said loudly enough for every neighbor to hear. "And no fake HOA president is going to change that." But as Officer Ramirez separated us to take individual statements, I noticed Christina lean close to Kyle and whisper something that made her cousin's face go pale with fear. The fake security theater was over, but whatever she just ordered him to do looked a lot more serious than costume patrol. She was planning something bigger, something that went beyond harassment and fake violations. Brenda Hale's mask had finally slipped completely, revealing the dangerous predator underneath. And now I knew exactly what kind of enemy we were really facing. But as police separate them, Christina whispers something to Kyle that makes him go pale. What did she just order him to do? Have you ever been targeted just for serving your country? Drop your story below. Brenda Hale turned out to be a lot smarter and more dangerous than I'd initially given her credit for. Within 24 hours of the fake security incident, she'd filed a comprehensive legal assault package that would have impressed military lawyers with its precision and thoroughness. The woman weaponized the entire civilian legal system against my family, filing assault charges, VA benefits fraud allegations, and dangerous veteran reports with multiple agencies, including a formal request for review of my 30% disability rating. She was systematically attacking every aspect of my veteran status while painting herself as a terrorist civilian victim. Her complaint to the court was a masterpiece of manipulative writing, specifically citing my military training makes him dangerous to civilians and alleging PTSD-related violence against community members while questioning my fraudulent disability claims while demonstrating combat capability. Christina had done her homework, crafting a narrative that played into every negative stereotype about veterans while positioning herself as a helpless community leader under attack. The restraining order was granted based on her fabricated evidence package, edited videos showing me aggressively patrolling the neighborhood during my daily dog walks, manipulated social media posts about military surveillance, and witness statements from Kyle and Trent describing their trauma from the encounter. The isolation hit faster than I'd expected. My security clearance came under immediate review pending the criminal investigation, meaning my cybersecurity consulting work ground to a halt just when we needed income most. Some neighbors who had been friendly before started crossing the street to avoid us, clearly buying into Christina's dangerous veteran narrative. The VA began its own investigation into my disability benefits, questioning whether someone capable of violent assault deserved compensation for service-related injuries. Christina had turned my military service, the thing I was most proud of in my life, into evidence against my own character. I found myself sitting in our darkened living room that first night after the restraining order was served, staring at paperwork that could destroy everything Maya and I had built together. "She's using your service against you," my wife said quietly, sitting beside me on the couch. "The thing you're most proud of became her weapon, and now they're questioning your injuries like you're some kind of fraud." The helplessness was unlike anything I'd experienced in 8 years of military service. In combat zones, you can identify threats and respond appropriately. But civilian legal warfare, that was Christina's territory, and she was winning. Bob Thompson proved that Navy intelligence veterans understand surveillance when he contacted us secretly that evening, carrying security footage that would change everything. She used the same tactics against me 50 years ago when I questioned her predecessor's accounting. The 69-year-old veteran explained, his weathered hands steady despite his obvious anger. Time to show her what veterans do when cornered. We adapt, improvise, and overcome. Walter's folder contained 2 years' worth of documentation proving Christina's systematic harassment of military families, financial records showing $32,000 in missing HOA funds, and email trails connecting the embezzlement directly to Noah's private school tuition payments. Noah Hale's rebellion against his mother provided the inside intelligence we desperately needed to mount an effective counterattack. Christina's 19-year-old son had been recording his mother's practice sessions for months, capturing hours of her rehearsing victim testimony and coaching Kyle and Trent on their false stories. "She makes me sick," Noah told me during a clandestine meeting at the local coffee shop. "Her obsession with punishing military families has consumed everything decent about her." Dad would be disgusted by what she became. The kid handed me a flash drive containing months of Christina's anti-military rants and detailed planning for harassment campaigns against veteran households. The evidence on Noah's recordings was damning beyond anything I'd hoped for. Christina is practicing her terrified civilian voice in front of a mirror, coaching Kyle and Trent to claim PTSD symptoms from our encounter while simultaneously mocking actual veteran trauma. And most importantly, her admission that every veteran family deserves what I did to them because they're all responsible for David's death. She had recorded herself confessing to systematic targeting of military families based on nothing but her twisted grief and misdirected rage. The woman had created evidence of her own crimes while thinking she was preparing to destroy mine. But Christina's most damaging mistake was her expert witness preparation, which Noah captured on video with his phone. She had hired Dr. Patel, a veterinarian, to provide medical testimony about Kyle and Trent's injuries, not realizing she was creating a comedy of errors that would destroy her credibility. I thought she wanted me to examine shell shock and military working dogs, the confused animal doctor explained when confronted. Christina's PTSD expert had spent an hour evaluating 2 grown men for symptoms he'd only seen in traumatized horses, complete with medical reports that used veterinary terminology for human psychological conditions. The legal momentum began shifting when the prosecutor assigned to my case turned out to be a former Marine who immediately recognized the suspicious patterns in Christina's complaint. I've seen false accusations designed to weaponize the system against legitimate veterans, he explained during our meeting. Your accuser's timeline doesn't match the evidence. Her witnesses have credibility issues, and frankly, her anti-military bias is obvious in every document she filed. The man understood exactly what Christina was attempting, using civilian prejudices against veterans to destroy an innocent family through bureaucratic warfare. Community support started building quietly as from various sources, and now federal crimes involving veteran memorial funds collected through U.S. mail. She'd crossed every line imaginable, and Noah's recordings proved she knew exactly what she was doing. Christina's desperation became obvious when she attempted to bribe both Walter and Noah to destroy evidence against her. "I'll pay your college costs with clean money if you delete those recordings," she offered her own son, not realizing he was still documenting her crimes. The bribery attempt was captured on Noah's phone, adding witness tampering and obstruction charges to her growing list of federal offenses. She was digging her own grave deeper with every illegal action, but her obsession with destroying military families had blinded her to the consequences. The VA investigator's final report vindicated my disability rating while revealing the scope of Christina's false complaint campaign. Mrs. Wright filed similar fraudulent reports against 14 other veterans in the past 2 years. The investigator explained, "She's been systematically attempting to weaponize our benefit system against legitimate service members while providing zero credible evidence of actual fraud." My 30% rating for combat-related back injuries was confirmed. But more importantly, Christina now faced federal charges for filing false reports against multiple veterans. As we prepared for Christina's announced emergency community meeting to vote on removing dangerous military families from the neighborhood, Noah sent me an urgent midnight text that made my blood run cold. "Found Mom's laptop. She's not just planning to get you evicted. Call me now." The kid's voice was shaking when I reached him. And what he discovered on Christina's computer went far beyond anything we'd imagined. What else has Christina been plotting? Noah's discovery on Christina's laptop revealed a conspiracy that went far beyond neighborhood harassment into something approaching domestic terrorism against military families. When the kid called me at midnight, his voice was shaking with a combination of fear and disgust that told me we were dealing with something much bigger than an unhinged HOA president. "Evan, you need to see this tonight," he whispered into the phone. "My mom's not just planning to get you evicted. She's coordinating with people in other states. There are spreadsheets with veteran families' names, addresses, service records, and something called neutralization timelines that make my skin crawl." Meeting Noah at the 24-hour diner outside town felt like a scene from a spy movie. But the evidence he brought was terrifyingly real. Christina had been running what she called Operation Homecoming, a systematic campaign to identify and drive out veteran families from civilian communities across multiple states. Her laptop contained detailed dossiers on over 60 military families, complete with service records she'd obtained through illegal means, psychological profiles based on public information, and step-by-step harassment protocols designed to exploit each family's specific vulnerabilities. She's been networking with other HOA presidents and community leaders who share her anti-military views, Noah explained, his hands trembling as he scrolled through his mother's files. The scope of Christina's network was staggering and absolutely terrifying. Email chains with HOA officials in Texas, Florida, California, and Virginia revealed a coordinated effort to cleanse civilian communities of military entitlement and violence. These people genuinely believed that veterans were inherently dangerous and didn't belong in peaceful neighborhoods, using Christina's husband's death as justification for systematic discrimination against anyone who'd served their country. "They call themselves civilian protection advocates," Noah said, his voice cracking with emotion. "They think they're protecting innocent families from dangerous veterans." Walter became our tactical coordinator, using his decades of experience to help organize the evidence into a comprehensive case that would destroy Christina's entire operation. "This isn't just about our neighborhood anymore," the Korean War veteran explained as we spread documents across his dining room table. "This woman has been running a domestic terrorism campaign against military families for 5 years, and we have the documentation to prove it." Walter's military precision in organizing evidence was impressive. Financial records showing $32,000 in HOA embezzlement, $15,000 stolen from veteran memorial funds across 3 counties, and email trails proving coordination with anti-military groups in other states. The breakthrough came when NOAA provided recordings of Christina's coordination calls with her network of civilian protection advocates. These people were planning simultaneous harassment campaigns against veteran families across multiple communities, sharing tactics and celebrating successful removals of military households. We got the Collins family to move after targeting their PTSD episodes. One collaborator reported during a recorded conference call, "The Thompson widow cracked after we questioned her husband's death benefits." And listening to these people discuss destroying military families like it was a hobby made my blood boil in ways I'd never experienced. Christina's financial crimes extended far beyond simple embezzlement into federal territory that would carry serious prison time. NOAA's evidence showed she'd been using the U.S. Postal Service to collect and redirect veteran memorial donations across multiple counties, making it mail fraud with federal jurisdiction. She set up fake memorial funds in Dad's name and collected donations from patriotic community members, NOAA explained, tears streaming down his face. Then she used that money to fund her harassment campaigns against living veterans. She's been desecrating Dad's memory while destroying other military families. The community military network that emerged to support our fight proved that veterans take care of their own, even when civilian systems fail them. Bob Thompson organized secure communication channels using his Navy intelligence background. Linda Park provided legal research from her paralegal training. And Colonel Harris used his Air Force connections to alert federal investigators about Christina's multi-state operation. "We've been fighting this woman individually for years," Colonel Harris explained during our first group meeting. "But together, we have the resources to destroy her entire network." Christina's desperation became obvious as she realized her operation was being exposed, leading to increasingly illegal attempts to silence witnesses and destroy evidence. She offered NOAA $50,000 to delete his recordings, threatened Walter with accidents if he continued providing financial documentation, and even attempted to bribe the veterinarian Dr. Smith to change his testimony about the fake medical reports. Every desperate move was documented and recorded, adding obstruction charges to her growing list of federal offenses. The pattern of Christina's harassment campaigns revealed a level of psychological manipulation that bordered on professional-grade psychological warfare. She had studied each veteran family's specific vulnerabilities, PTSD triggers, financial pressures, marital problems, children's school situations, and crafted personalized attack strategies designed to cause maximum damage with minimal legal exposure. She knew exactly which buttons to push to make families self-destruct, Linda Park explained, showing us her own harassment timeline. Military families often struggle with civilian integration, and she weaponized those struggles against us. Visual evidence from Ring cameras across multiple neighborhoods created an undeniable timeline, proving Christina's systematic stalking and harassment of veteran families. The footage showed her conducting surveillance, taking photos of military families' homes, and coordinating with her fake security teams to intimidate specific households. She's been running intelligence operations against her own neighbors, I realized while reviewing hours of security footage. This woman turned neighborhood watch into neighborhood warfare. Kyle and Trent's confession under pressure from federal investigators revealed the full scope of Christina's fake security operation and its connection to her larger anti-military campaign. She told us military families were dangerous and needed to be removed for community safety. Kyle admitted during his recorded statement, "We thought we were protecting people, but she was just using us to assault innocent families." The cousins provided evidence of Christina's coaching sessions, payment records for their security services, and details about planned escalation against other veteran households. NOAA's most damaging recording captured Christina's admission that she'd been coordinating with employers to get veterans fired from their jobs as part of her harassment campaigns. "Military training makes them unstable employees," she explained to one of her collaborators. Anonymous tips about their violent tendencies usually convince employers to eliminate the risk. She'd been systematically destroying veterans' livelihoods while stealing from their communities, all justified by her pathological hatred of military families. Federal investigators confirmed that Christina's operation had successfully driven out veteran families from dozens of communities across 5 states, representing millions of dollars in financial damage and immeasurable psychological trauma to military families. This is the largest systematic harassment campaign against veterans we've investigated, the lead federal agent explained. She's been running what amounts to a domestic terrorism operation disguised as